My name is Eric Groves. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Alignable. And I have the pleasure of hosting today's event. This event is part of Alignable's Small Business Essentials series. It's a series in which we cover topics that we've heard from our members that you want to learn more about. And what we do is we search out experts in a topic and we bring them in and we grill them and we make them sweat. Now, we have a great conversation. We talk about what they're doing and how it can help small businesses succeed. And these sessions are typically a lot of fun. And at the end, like I said, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A where we can take any of your questions, post them into the Q&A box. If we don't get to them during the Q&A, please go to the Constant Contact user community on Alignable, post them in there, and we'll make sure that they get answered in there. And the link to that will be in both the follow-up email and in chat. So I want to welcome today's expert. His name is Dave Charest. Dave is the Director of Small Business Success at Constant Contact, another place near and dear to my heart because some 20 years ago, I was one of the first employees at Constant Contact, spent 10 years there, and just love the passion that we built there to help small business owners succeed. And almost like perfect transition, when I was leaving, Dave was coming in to take over that and has really been doing a phenomenal job in acting as both an educator and an advocate for small businesses, marketing professionals, nonprofits, and helping them with practical marketing advice that can help them achieve their goals. And Dave is also a host of Constant Contact's Be a Marketer podcast. So join me in welcoming Dave. Dave, thank you so much for taking some time today. I'm excited to talk to you about AI and how it's going to turbocharge sales, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. Glad to say hello to everyone joining us live here today. And yeah, like ships in the night, we just missed each other. I think I started in September, just after you had left. But I remember reading the A to Z of email marketing, I think. Is that the book that you had written over
the
there?
Constant Contact Guide to Email Marketing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep,
yes,
which was
that
really
fun.
great. And so, yeah, I mean, so I'll say this though. Thank you for being one of the people that have really created that environment of, one of the things that always stuck with me, and one of the reasons I'm going on 12 years now at Constant Contact, and just the passion and the people there, and really the eagerness to help small businesses succeed just really comes through and through, and that's one of the reasons why I'm still there. So thank you for all that you've done before I showed up to make that a place that's been amazing to work over the years. So thank you.
Well, thanks so much. And, we're continuing it on. It's like why we have such a great partnership between Constant Contact and Alignable is that, when I left Constant Contact, we brought that concept of, really investing in education over to Alignable. And so it's great to be partnering with you guys around this. Today's topic is a fun one. Today's topic is all about AI, right? Or chat GPT, or however you want to process it. This whole artificial intelligence and how it's changing our world. And do we think of it as a friend or foe? And, I think one of the fun places to start off is to kind of share, both you and I, how we use AI in our daily lives. I'll kick it off and literally say, well, from my standpoint, I have, 3 monitors, and one monitor kind of has chat GPT up on it all the time. And I kind of think of it as, we're working remotely, and I kind of think of it as a friend. Right? It's just somebody I can bounce things off of, and I can ask it for advice. And it's like, hey, the other day I was trying to create a script for a video because we're trying to build a new video for our website. And I was like, well, here are the points I want to say. And I was like, I wonder if ChatGPT can actually turn that into a script for me. And so I posted that in there, created the prompt, had it create a beautiful script for me. And I was like, yeah, it's a little long. Could you shorten it? Could you make it a little bit more fun? Could you make it like better for business owners? That had, that were sort of in their 40s and 50s, and boom, it kept doing renditions of it. And I was like, wow, dang, that's pretty good. That gives me something I can work with. And so that's kind of my story of, the daily use of chat GPT. But Dave, tell me a little bit about how you use it in your career and your interactions.
It's a lot similar, and I think that's the right way to think about it, right? Is that really what it is? I mean, you see all the headlines, right? Like it's going to replace people, and people are going to lose, the doom and gloom, all of that stuff. And I think that's a wrong way to look at it, right? That's what gets people clicking things. But to your point, it is that. It's right. You're thinking of it almost like it's almost like an unpaid intern or a $20 a month in intern if you're paying for the pro version, right? But like if you think of it as a tool to help you, bat around ideas or edit something that you've written, or like I use it, for example. So I do a lot of, I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so like I'll create these videos and sometimes I'll take this transcript of that video and say like, here, take this and can you summarize what I say in this? And then, kind of clean it up because the transcript is, got your ums and ahs and all that kind of stuff. And then, help me promote the video itself, people watching that. And it'll take that and then I'll take it and then I have to edit that a little down a little bit more to your point, say, oh, can you make that shorter? And then sometimes it's a mishmash of those things, but it really helps eliminate part of the staring at the blank page kind of problem that I think is a big one, right? I mean, I think,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about this, I think, more down the road, but I think it also creates another blank page problem in some ways where it's like, okay, what do I say to this thing that's just kind of blinking, waiting for me to give it inputs,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, but I think that's the way to look at it. And I think, there's another way you can think of it from like a creative standpoint, right? So like I myself, I would consider myself a creator, right? And so you could say like, oh, is this going to replace what I do? And I think that's one of the things that, well, yeah, it can give you things, but it kind of lacks like that human component, right? Like it doesn't
Mhm.
have your expertise, it doesn't have your stories, but it helps kind of unlock those things for you. And I think that's really the right way to think about it is how can it just save you some time and kind of get you to another place with the work that you're doing. And I think that's just the generative piece of it, right? I mean, I think there's the other elements of it when you start thinking of what AI can do, and I haven't gone down this path with Chat GPT necessarily, but if you just think of AI in general, like what it can do in terms of just processing like huge amounts of data and getting
Sure.
into things like machine learning and those types of things, like that's a whole other like area that I think is maybe not as at the forefront right now, but I think that's actually when you start combining, I think of how we think about that at Constant Contact, and when you start thinking about like, ooh, how do you process that data and start understanding things and making predictions and then marrying that with automation and things like that's where things really get exciting for me. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that, but like
Yeah.
those are the things that I think are really interesting on what's happening here. It's a strange world that we live in these days.
Yes. And getting stranger by the minute. All right, well, let's take that and let's kind of dive into email marketing.
Sure.
Or more broadly, this whole concept of bringing your customers back, which is really what email marketing is ideally suited for and all about. When you think about that art of bringing customers back, um, how should we as business owners think about the benefits AI can bring to us in terms of it helping us to hit our goals and our objectives?
Yeah.
And maybe let's take that approach that you were talking about and let's start with the question in two different parts.
Sure.
Let's start off with the piece that is sort of the things behind the scenes, because I know, here at Alignable, we've been doing stuff for a while with AI, but Constant Contact goes back even further in terms of the auto magic stuff that happens behind the scenes, where Constant Contact is using some form of intelligence to try and make it easier or to make the user experience easier for businesses to use the product and get value out of the product. And then after we tackle that, we'll kind of jump into the side of like the small business owner facing elements of it and show people how they can actually take advantage of it. But let's start in the back room, if you
Yeah,
will, and just
sure.
kind of share a little bit of what your history's been with that.
Yeah, so one of the places where, of course, right, everybody's talking about ChatGPT and this generative piece right now, but I think one of the things that the Constant Contact team, and I'll admit this, right? Like I'm not the technical person, right? Like I'm amazed that this stuff works. I'm just glad it does, right? But like don't ask me how it happens. It's just I'm glad it happens. But one of the things that we've been doing since like 2019, the team has been building AI capabilities for a tool that happens behind the scenes. So when you think of, well, you talk about bringing people back. Well, in order to bring people back, the email has to actually get delivered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main thing. And so when you think about what's going on, from a compliance standpoint, and we have a team watching and monitoring things, we've created a whole AI component that helps us identify people that may be bad actors and trying to use our platform in a way. We call it the Spaminator. And it
Hmm.
allows us to basically take our teams out of having to do that manual process. And we can identify things like, oh, before they get sent out. And if those things got sent out, after a while, that starts to take a hit on our domain authority, right? In terms of like getting those emails through to the email inbox. And
Hmm.
so our customers benefit from us being able to do that because now we can maintain that 97% deliverability rate that we have, right? And so that's just one of the ways that we use it to, behind the scenes, help us do our jobs better so that we can make sure our customers emails get sent and get to the inboxes that they meant to, right? And so that's one way to really think about it. And the other pieces are, we've been doing things like identifying kind of the best time to send within your contacts, like that type of stuff.
Hmm.
For a while, we've even had AI component that will scan your email and then help make recommendations to you for subject lines, those types of things. And then we can get deeper into this, but I mentioned that data piece. But I think that's where things really get interesting in terms of, and we're looking for more ways to apply this. But if you think in the e-commerce space, because there's so much more data, right? Because you have an actual kind of outcome, right? Where it's some
Hmm.
businesses can be a little bit more nebulous, but with like an e-commerce store, for example, you click on something, you go, you buy it, and you can pull that data in and you can process that. Like this is where things get really interesting because it allows you to add that when the machine learning element to it. So it's going to learn what's happening based on what your customers are doing, but then also start to get to this point where it allows you to then make predictions on, oh, so let's say, for example, like I drink 1 cup of coffee a day. Eric, how many cups do you drink or do you not?
Just one.
Just
Just
one.
one.
Okay, we're on the same space, right? So you and I, we drink one. That's all the caffeine I can handle, and that's the truth of
Right.
it, right? But I've got some colleagues that may drink like 10 cups of coffee, right? And so I think what's interesting, let's say you have those 2 contacts in your database and you're selling coffee, based on the patterns that it's starting to recognize, it can say like, oh, Dave and Eric, they only drink 1 cup. And so if they ordered from us, they're not going to need to order again until, 3 months from now or whatever the case may be. But the person drinking
Hmm.
10, they got to reorder every month. It can start to recognize that. And so I kind of explain this like it's kind of the difference between playing checkers and playing chess, right? Where
Hmm.
with email, you do a lot of thinking through, hey, here's what we're going to do to, you kind of make your best guess about a group of people, right? When you start thinking about like breaking lists down and segmenting and that stuff. But this really allows you to treat people as individuals because it's saying, based on this contact, it's probably a good idea. You can set up the plays, right? If this person does this,
Right.
I'm going to do this versus just kind of saying like, all right, I'm going to trigger this and send the series and make my best guess. Like this is actually saying like, all right, Joe is drinking 10 cups. It would be good to send him this email at this time because he's likely ready to buy, right? And then
Hmm.
2 months later, I'm going to send one to Dave and Eric because now they're probably ready to buy, right? And so I can start to learn that stuff over time. And if you think about that, well, I think this is the future we get to, whereas like then you start to automate that stuff where now it's just kind of saying like you're logging in, you're doing your stuff, and it's like saying like, hey, looks like this person's ready. You might want to send this. Here's what that email
Hmm.
looks like. Do you want to send that? Yes, I do. And then you can send it off, right? And then so it's like this becomes like you have a whole, we're talking about just like an assistant to help you manually do things. Imagine future state where you start getting into that point where you're actually, it's doing all of this stuff kind of for you. It's like your own personal marketing assistant, right? And I think that's how
Yeah.
we look at it.
That's fascinating because I remember back in the early days of Constant Contact, we used to talk about as your email blast,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And the future is really, it's a personalized one-to-one message sent in mass,
yep.
right? Or sent not necessarily in mass, but sent at the right time to the right people to kind of cultivate a relationship rather than, because if you mail too often, you can like diminish a relationship. If you don't mail often enough, they'll forget about you. So it's finding that perfect balance. And the interesting thing is technology is going to help do that behind the scenes for folks. And I think that's one of the cool things for a lot of people to realize is if you're using a platform like Constant Contact, they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes. But let's shift gears a little bit and go to the stuff in front of the scenes.
Sure.
And how are these people going to actually start to see the abilities of AI in their daily lives when they're doing things like email marketing. And so, I think the easiest way for me to go through this is to kind of think back to that book that I wrote a bazillion years ago, on the constant contacts guide to email marketing, and sort of step through the process of creating a great email. Um, and so, we didn't talk about this when we were talking earlier, but I guess step one in the whole process is building a list,
Sure.
right? And so, from the standpoint of how we go about building a list, are there any things that you guys are doing from that standpoint, from an AI perspective, in terms of helping people think through the questions that they ask to segment or anything like that from a list building perspective?
Yeah, so I think primarily it's on that segmentation side of things, right? And so one of the things that we look at, and this isn't, it's part AI, part not, but it's this idea of like thinking dynamically, right? And so that means that you can start to build lists of people, like let's say you've got someone that's very engaged, very active, right? That's always opening your emails, always clicking on things. You could consider them kind of like VIP customers, right? And so
Hmm.
what we can start to do is start to say like, oh, based on this activity, this is somebody that's like highly engaged. We're going to create here's that list of people, right? Here are these people that you might want to go to first, or think of something special that you can do for them, or a campaign around them, versus we're going to build this other list of these are your least engaged people, right? And those are the people you can start to say like, oh, you know what? These people, they're still kind of engaged, but I don't want to be sending them a lot, because then they might get turned off and just unsubscribe, and then I lose them completely, right? Whereas those least engaged people, I'm going to maybe send to them just less frequently, so I keep them, warm, but they're not like, I'm not forcing them to jump off, right? And
Hmm.
so those are the types of things that you can start to think about with the list, is that you start saying like, okay, these are people ready for this, these are people ready for that, and then you have those lists kind of built for you so that you can choose to do something with them manually, or automate something that will go out to those people based on the stage that they're in.
Right. And so then let's shift to the next biggest challenge, which is always the challenge of creating content.
Yeah.
And in just a minute, we're going to give these guys a sneak peek at some,
Yeah.
well, not really a sneak peek, but we're going to actually show them happening in action. But let's start off before we get to the core content with the subject line, right?
Yeah.
Because, when you send an email, the question people ask is, do I know you? Do I care? Right? And the do I know you is the who's sending it, who's it coming from, and do I care, or why should I care, is that subject line. So how is AI helping people create better subject lines to drive better engagement with their email?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things at play here, right? Where, to your point, I just want to mention this and reiterate it, is that, often people really get highly focused on the subject line, and I think it's a component of it. But to your point, it's the secondary piece. Knowing who that email, like the number one reason people are going to open is because they know who it's coming from, right? They
Right.
recognize the name, and oh yeah, I want to read Dave's email. I want to read Dave's newsletter, right? Then right, it's like, okay, yeah, how do you give them a reason to open, right? And that's where the
Right.
subject line comes in. And so this is where, I mentioned data, and what we're doing, of course, to help apply this across how we're using AI as we get into the generative pieces. Obviously generating a subject line is one of those, but we're using all of those best practices, all of the years of data that we've accumulated. I mean, 28 years in business, right? Like, we've got a lot of that information that the models can learn from to see what works, what doesn't, and then marrying that with what's happening in a particular account. This is where you start to get to that place where, okay, we can scan your email and give you a recommendation on, okay, your email is about this. Here's a great subject line for that based on what we know and things that we've seen to work, right? And so
Mhm.
it kind of helps. Again, same thing. It's like an assistant to you, right? Where it's like saying like, here are some recommendations. Would you like to use one of these? Or you might see something where that says, ooh, you know what? This would be cool if I just modified this a bit, right? And so it really gets you in that place where I think some people, we know a lot of our customers are business owners first and experts at what they do, and not necessarily
Mhm.
marketers at the core, right? They're marketers by necessity. And so we want to try to take the marketing pieces off your plate so that you can focus on what you do, and succeed based on the value of your service or your product or whatever that is. And then we can help with the marketing pieces. And I think that's really what it's all about, is how do we make those recommendations based on what we know, what it is that you're doing and what we know about what's happening within, your audience. And then we look at that data, of course, in with privacy in mind, right? We're not sharing that data with anybody and we're keeping it within the sandbox, but
Right.
it's then taking that and then saying like, here's a recommendation. Here's something to try, do that.
Cool. So let's get to the eye candy piece of the equation and talk about creating content, because this is really fascinating to me and how you guys are doing this.
Yeah.
Um, can you sort of tee this up and then walk everybody through sort of this demo of you captured a use case to share, but
Yeah.
is there what would you do to tee it up and then take
Yeah.
us through it?
Well, I'll do this. So, we mentioned this idea of that, right? We want to solve that kind of blank page problem. But as I mentioned earlier, I think ChatGPT itself creates another blank page problem because the output is only as good as the input, right? And so
Right.
you almost have to figure out, you need another job description that you have to become, right? Where being a business owner, you got to wear another hat, which is prompt engineer, right?
Right.
Which is, all right, how do I get the best output out of this thing so it's most meaningful to me? And so that
So
in
before you
itself
go
can
on
be
from
intimidating.
that,
Yeah, yeah.
explain what the prompt is.
So exactly.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is, so if you've ever used ChatGPT, it's essentially like it looks like your text messaging. It's like a chat interface, right? And so you can say, "Hello, I want to do this today. I want to do that." And so it's kind of like just looking at you've got this robot person on the other side, right? You're going to talk to it, and it's like, okay, well, what do I say? What do I do, right? And
All right.
so there are layers of what you would want to do to maybe get to a well-designed email or a well-written email that is designed to capture your tone, to capture how you want to say something, the type of email that you want to get across based on, marketing best practices that we know that are proven to work, like those types of things that you would have to get it to that place. You would have to input that, say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, I want you to do this, and I want you to do that in order to get the
Hmm.
good output that you want. What we're
Right.
trying to do is eliminate that output, right? And so with the AI component that we have, it uses the pieces of ChatGPT, but then also our models on top of it, right? And so what we'll see here in a minute is that what you're able to do then is just say, all right, here are a couple of keywords, here are a couple of prompts, right? I've got this thing coming up, it's on this date at this time. I want people to come check it out. You could just put in something like that, and then it works its magic and actually spits out a full email for you that conveys that information how you want it to be conveyed, and it learns over time. And so you can say, hey, this was really great, I'm going to give that a thumbs up. So then it learns that, oh, that's the type of style that you like, right? So all right, I'm going to give you more of that. And it's looking at the way you talk to your customers. We were just doing an example the other day, and someone was telling us she's in the creator space and she runs a lot of markets, and she was saying like, yeah, when we use it, it actually knows that like-minded creatives, like it knows how to use those terms because it knows those are the types of people that we're talking to, right? And so this
Hmm.
all again becomes ingrained in what we know about your particular account, right? And it helps you on that level. So that's what I mean by eliminating that whole process of figuring out what do I got to say to it to get a good thing. We want to try to make that easier for you, so you can just put in, what do you want to, what are you trying to get across? We'll take care of the rest for you. And so we'll see that here in a second. So the two things we'll show are, we've created what we call like an AI hub within Constant Contact. So when you're in there, it kind of just shows you all the different ways that you can use it, and it's changing all the time because we're adding to it. So we'll show you a little bit of what that looks like, and then we'll actually show you how you can go in and just actually use it to put in your keywords and create an email, which is pretty cool.
Cool. And while you're pulling that up, we had one of our attendees say, can you say that a prompt is just like giving ChatGPT directions?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely,
It's
it is.
waiting
Yeah.
for you to tell what you want, and you can be very creative in what you tell it. But go ahead, pull it up, David. Let's show folks what you guys are doing.
All right. Awesome. So this is that AI content hub that we have here. And so what this does is this just gives you a place to kind of see like all the things that are new, that are coming, and the different ways that you can use it. So you can write, you can generate SMS messages, you can get better rates, like all of this stuff. And it shows you all of these things that you can kind of do and what we're adding that's new, right? And so how you can get the subject line recommendations, that type of stuff. But where things get interesting, of course, is when we get into this part where it's the content generator, where you can actually use it to generate the content you're going to use in your email. So let's take a look here. So we're going to click into here, and you can choose the type of email that you want to create, a newsletter, a product promotion, or an announcement. So here we're going to use an announcement. We're going to pick the tone we want. So we're going to say enthusiastic, and then we're going to just put in a few keywords here about what we want to talk about. And so in this case, we're going to punch in here. We've got a new location for our store. We're a smoothie location, right? We've got a new dragon fruit flavor in downtown Boston. We've extended our hours. Okay, I just want to get some text on here and what that looks like. So that's as simple as that you need to put in. And then this is going to pull up in a second here. This is going to give you a couple of options to choose from. And so you can see this gives you, hey, we're thrilled to announce that our smoothie empire is expanding to a brand new location in downtown Boston. And that's not all. Brace yourselves for a tantalizing taste of our new dragon fruit flavor smoothie, right? It's bursting with vitamins. It gives you all this information that you can copy and then paste into an email if you want. It gives you another version of that if that's a little bit more your style or more of what you're looking for. And then once you take that, you can actually copy and paste that into an email and, make your spacing and do all of those things, or cut and push paces of that. If you didn't like that, you can generate some more options. So you can click that, and it's going to give you a few more things to choose from to see if that's any better or more what you're looking for. And so that's like pretty neat. Now, what I like about this too is you can actually use this to generate an email as well. And so rather than just getting the text, we could say, all right, we're doing this type of thing. Give me a whole email, right? And so now it's going to pop up. Here's a template. Here's the information. Once we get into this, you open this actually right within the editor from that point, and then that's going to bring you in so you can go in and make your edits. It's going to pull in the information we know about you, right? So it's, in this example, it's got our Constant Contact logo up the top, right? It gives you all the pieces that you need. It's got a CTA on there. And then you can go in and you can add your own photos and that type of thing, where we're moving toward a space where we'll actually be able to help you with the photos itself. We're not quite there yet, but that'll be next. But then you can take a look at this email, right? You can look at it on mobile. This is the desktop, of course. You can see what that's going to look like on mobile. And so really the ultimate thing here is that, like, yeah, you know what you want to talk about. You might not know how to say it, but we're going to take care of that for you and save you all that time so you can get this thing out the door. And I think we have an example here of what this looks like once we put the image in, right? So now we've gone in, we've made our edits, and you've got an email designed to get somebody to take a particular action. And I think that's pretty cool, right? When you think of the time you could spend a couple of hours maybe at one point, particularly if you're procrastinating because you're not a writer, right? Like, you got this right away and ready to go.
That's fantastic. So if I'm a Constant Contact user, where will I find that? Where do I have to go to look into to
Yeah,
access it?
so right now, when you log into your account, it's actually right at the top of your dashboard, and it just says try that now, and it's available. I think because the AI content generator is here, right? So you can click right into that, and
Perfect.
it brings you,
Okay,
so
just try it
it's
out.
front and center for you. Yep, so you can start playing around with that. And again, the more you
Awesome.
use it, the better it's going to get over time, because it does learn. And I think that's where things really start to get interesting.
That's cool. So it's learning, but not necessarily sharing my learnings with other
Exactly.
people. It's the
Yep.
learnings are staying within my account. That's fantastic. And so clearly AI can make your emails a lot easier to create. But what if I'm not a really creative person and I kind of want to, like, add get some personality added to my email, or make them a little edgy, or things like that? Do you see AI actually, turning me into a great writer?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see it helping on that part. I mean, I think some of the downsides right now is that, like, obviously it doesn't have like those personal. It's not human, right? I mean, let's be frank, right? It's kind of like the whenever you see that, like, the robots and things, right? In the movies, still, like, they have the dead eyes, right? Like, it's not there yet because it doesn't have a human component to it. But what I'm saying here with this stuff is that as it's learning over time, it's seeing what's working for you. You're choosing the correct tones, you're thumbs upping, you're liking things, and it starts to get to a place where it starts to understand, like, who are the people that you're talking to, understand that audience, and then create something as you're making those modifications and adjustments to be sounding more like the voice that you would want to have. And maybe if you have like brand guidelines, that type of thing, getting closer to that point where it's, again, it's like that that intern, right? Where it's learned your brand, it's giving you its best foot forward, and then and it gets better over time. And so you're training it and educating it and getting closer to what it is so that you can, if you need to, just copy and paste. You might not be able to do that right out of the gate. And I think it's always important to have that human element in there, right? You're in control, like nothing's going to go out automatically unless you want it to, but you
Right.
have the last look at it before it does that. And I think that's what's interesting.
That's fantastic. Well, I've got a bunch of additional questions, but I'm going to skip those because we've had so many great questions posted into the Q&A. And if you've got more, please post them into the Q&A. And as just as a reminder, if we don't get to your question and it's constant contact oriented, go to the constant contact user group on Alignable, post the question in there, and our friends from Constant Contact will be in there answering those questions. If you've got questions about ChatGPT in general, there is an Alignable ChatGPT group that you can join, so you can talk about things like using GPT to help you with your balancing your accounts or whatever. So lots of different resources. We're all learning at the same time you guys are, and so share your experiences, participate in these groups, and be sure to join that Constant Contact user group, because as they develop new tools, they'll post them in there, so you kind of stay top of mind with all of those things that are working on. So a real short and sweet one. Joe asked the question: is AI the same as Chat GPT?
So there are a bunch of different kind of models out there. ChatGPT is one of the models that uses AI, right? So you could argue, right? Well, not argue. I mean, it's true. Like Siri, Alexa, like those are all AI
Yep.
components. Like the algorithms that are on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, right? Those are all AI algorithms, and they're using their own models. I think ChatGPT is one that we kind of build on top of, right? So that's what we use in terms of like the language related things. We use
Right.
something else in terms of the data, right? And so when you're thinking of it in that space, like that's really the one that I think is probably most mainstream right now. But there are a bunch of different AI models out there. ChatGPT is
Mhm.
one we build upon from the generative piece in terms of creating that content
Right.
with our own things and our knowledge on top of that. So we use that API to build those things out for you.
Yeah, it's a great sort of index. It's like a library that you can
Yeah.
go tap into using AI to give you back responses. But AI, like you said, is used in everything you can imagine under the sun these days. Um, question is, should I use AI only for my emails or for all of my marketing?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
that's a great question. So I think a couple of things. I mean, you can use it to help you generate content for. We look across our platform. You can use it for emails. You can use it to help generate social posts. You can use it to help generate text messages, right? So we're trying to look at across all those different channels you may be using in order to kind of make that easier for you to do, of course, and create those things that you would need to promote a thing that you have going on. And then, as I mentioned, as we start to look towards the future and get into this place where we can really help you with the data piece of it. I mean, I think that's really where things start to get really interesting, as I mentioned earlier, and where, yeah, you'll want to use that because, again, that's the difference between essentially what it allows you to do at that point. It's allowing you, it's like hiring or adding a data analyst to your team,
mhm.
and then it allows you to act at the precise moments that somebody would somebody would need the right thing with the right type of offer for them based on what they've done in the past. That's where I think, yeah, like you want to use that because it's helping you kind of understand. It becomes like a marketing brain, so to speak, right? That's saying like, hey, here's a good thing to do. And we also envision it becoming like a coach and an assistant to you as well
Yep.
within the product and in the platform so that we could say like, hey, you've never tried an ad on Facebook, let's say. Here's something that I kind of put together that might be good for you. Would you like to try that? Would you like to do that? Right. And so it's giving you like, oh, this thing really seemed to work. Maybe this would work in this location. Right. And so it gives you and starts coaching you, right. And helping you along the way to just make you become a better marketer without you having to go hunt down the information to figure that out, right? We're going to pepper you
Right.
with things that, hey, we see this work for other people. You might want to try this.
Yeah, and I think it's from our standpoint, it goes well beyond marketing.
Yeah.
In our case, where we're trying to help business owners network with each other, you can see it in its raw form, just being like, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent, and I'm trying to figure out how do I work with a florist
Mm.
to help us both generate new business." You can ask that question to ChatGPT and actually get some very good actionable things that you can do. And you're going to see that kind of rolling out across the Alignable platform. And then it can start to take into account data. So it's like, hey, I've sort of categorized my referral partners to be these types of people. This is my ideal customer. I'm a kitchen store. What other ideal referral partners should I be thinking about? Right. And then
Right.
it can use the data of, Alignable's full data set and say, well, geez, the one that you're missing is this. And this person in your network could actually introduce you to three of them that are really good. That's
Yep. Did we lose Eric, or did we lose me? It was Eric. Okay. Well, I'll pull up the questions as we look at these. Yep, it looks like we lost Eric. So I'll try to answer this question while we hopefully get Eric back here. So it looks like we've got an answer here that can this send emails out based on a recipient's behavior? For example, some people check their email in the morning, some check their email during lunch. Can AI? Yes. So yes, so this is really interesting. And so you can get to this point with the AI where it's almost, think of it as building individual contact records for the people in your contact list, right? And so thinking about when they open emails specifically. And so what you can do is, let's say you're going to go into your account and you've got a special thing going. So let's use our smoothie example. Oh, I want to send this information out about the smoothie, and I want to let people know about this. And so what you can do is, like, here's the email. Let's say we use the one that it generated for us. You can hit send. And what it can do is, instead of just sending to everybody at that time, it can hold the messages and send it to the people at the right time for them. So if I open at I take a lunch break and that's when I'm checking my email, well, then that's where it would send to somebody, right? Versus somebody that may be first thing in the morning. All right, we've got Eric back. I'm just finishing up the answer to this question, Eric, about recipients' behavior and sending out emails, right? And so
fantastic. Wait to jump in. All the
and
power
so
just went
I'm like,
out.
we've done this before. We can get this. We can
Yes.
keep this going. So the idea there, right, is that, like, yes, you are then sending things at the right times for the right people, and eventually even getting to this point where you're sending the right things at the right times to the right people through the right channel, right? And so it could even say, like, hey, maybe this person usually responds better to a text message versus a social post versus an email, right? And of course, you can then override those things. And let's just say you had something timely to get out right away. You could then do that. So it's a pretty interesting stuff. Like I said, it's amazing times that we live in right now.
Many times when the power is on, and now I'm connected via my cell phone. So hopefully I will stay with you. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so where did we get to on the questions here?
So we just I think
Uh,
we're now at the, how do you set these settings that you were describing?
okay. All right. Uh, okay, so here's sort of question of like, what will AI tell me the best time to send an email to my contact list
Yep,
now
that's
and
the
in the
one
future?
yeah, that's the one we just answered.
Okay. Um, all right, I'm considering using a video spokesperson versus via an AI avatar program. I was looking at this the other day too. With a traditional email campaign, um, uh, is it from a campaign process? Is a video worth adding to it, or will it cause less click through if you add sort of videos into emails? How does that impact your performance of your email?
Yeah, so The thing we've seen consistently is that videos actually increase click-throughs in emails. And I think the big thing to mention here is that sometimes people want to put a video in an email, and you actually can't do that yet. That's not something that's actually like allowed. You can use like kind of GIFs, those types of things that add motion, which I think are a good idea to do. But yeah, typically you can put a link in there. It has the big play button on it. And as long as you've got a video that is, something that somebody would be interested in watching, those can definitely help from a click through perspective. The AI piece, I don't necessarily know. I have seen some of those programs, but I'm not an expert on those, and I haven't actually played around with any of them. But I think, again, this gets us into this place where interesting times, and interesting that we can start to do some of these things that maybe we weren't able to do before. And I think the important thing for people just in general, particularly if you find yourself getting interested in the marketing pieces of it, is try things, see what works
Mhm.
best for you, and see what you figure out. Because like I think, the best practices are always good places to start. But ultimately, what you need to figure out is, what are your best practices, right? What are the things that work in relation to your business and the audience that you're speaking to? And really, the only way you can do that is by doing something, right? And seeing how people respond to that and what happens and how that works for you. So I would say, it, to answer the original question, yes, videos can increase click-throughs, but try other
Great.
stuff.
Yeah, and I apologize because I keep like losing power and come back on. So if you lose me again, just keep rocking on like you were doing, which was awesome. But I'll
Sounds
try and
good.
do my best and hang with you. But will AI and Constant Contact take my list and separate it based on interests?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're looking to do would be, so this is where you got to think about it a little bit differently, right? It's not so much that you're generating lists as much as you're looking at an individual contact to say, this person is ready for this type of message, right? And so if you think of this, is that whole checkers chess thing that I was talking about
Hmm.
earlier, right? Where you think traditionally what you would do is you would say, okay, someone just joined my list, they're new, so I'm going to create a welcome series, right? And so I'm going to send this welcome series to them. And then, maybe a few months go by, I got a new product, so I'm going to send a series of emails about this new product and, see if I can get them to buy it. Well, the chess area comes in is what we're trying to do now is then say like, okay, let's say you have a Shopify store. How can I take the data and connect it from you have on your Shopify store and what happens there from a sales perspective and the actions they've taken on your website and things that they're looking at, what they're doing with your emails and what they're engaging with there. How can you then set up the types of emails that you would want? Like, so it could be a like their build relationship email, right? A non-promotional type of thing where
Hmm.
they're just getting to know your business versus a more sales generated thing where you're letting somebody know about something or you're giving them a particular offer about something. And so what you're kind of doing is setting up those plays, if you will, right? If they do this, I'm going to do that. And it's looking for those types of opportunities. And so it's less about segmenting out a full list to then send something to that whole list and make your best guess, a better guess than just not segmenting, right? But this is really more about thinking about the individual. And so you have the
Hmm.
plays ready to go for, oh, Eric was on the site looking at this thing, I'm going to send him he didn't buy anything, it's been a couple of days, I'm going to send him an offer for this thing and see if that will get him to take that action. And it's going to help you start to predict what are the best offers that would work for that person.
Great. And one of the things I just got pointed out to one of the folks on the team is posted into the chat a link to some AI best practices. So if you want sort of a resource that you can kind of reference over time, that's a great one. Just look for that in the chat, and it'll also be in the email summary that we send out to folks. This is an interesting question because I think that it kind of helps you understand the power of ChatGPT and AI. But can you give me an example of a great subject line for a specific type of business that I just lost because my power just went out again? Um, there it is, for an appliance store. Thank you. I just came back. So what is a good prompt for my business? I own an appliance store. And I think that's kind of one of the
Mm.
the thought things is the prompt doesn't necessarily have to, you know, be specific to being an appliance store. It's more the outcome that you're looking, and you inform it by saying I'm an appliance store. But how would you answer that question for Scott?
So that's a good one. So I would start to think through it like this, and I'm not a prompt engineer myself, right? But I'm because I'm still learning, right? All of this stuff is so new, but I that's where I would start to think like, I would say, hello, Chat GPT, right? Like I want you to act as a world-class email marketer, and I would like you to create a subject line that would be attractive to customers looking to purchase a particular type of appliance, right? Or something like that. Like, how could I get them to open the email? And I would think through like those types of things and then test that to see how that works. And what I like about when you use Chat GPT proper is that maybe that doesn't give you the output that you're looking for. You can say generate again, but this is a trick that most people don't do, is you can actually go back and edit your prompt. So instead of saying it generates something else based on that same prompt, you can go in and say like, oh, you know what, let me make some modifications here to how I asked it to do that, and then to see if that gets you closer to something that you want to do. But ultimately, I would say also that, it's going to give you suggestions based on things that we know to be true, right? Like in terms of best
Mhm.
practices, right? It's going to pull from, can you say this in an intriguing way? Can you do something that is designed to get people to open, right? Is it going to add an emoji? Is it going to ask a question? Is it going to, give you a percent off? It's going to give you those types of things that are typically been known to work, but
Mhm.
maybe crafted a little closer to what you're looking for specifically. But I would say that's the deal, is you want to give it as much information as possible so that it can be specific for you.
Yeah, and one of the questions that we have really has to deal with this date thing with Chat GPT and version 3 versus version
Mm,
4. Can you speak to what is Constant Contact using? Is it using the 4.0 version of GPT, or is it using an
that's
earlier version?
I believe we're on the 4 version now, but I can't say that for certain. I don't know exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think we are as well. And I think one of the things that this person points out is that the 3 version only went to 2021.
Right.
And the 4 version is a lot more, I'm not sure how close it is to real time, but it's a lot more up to date. So that is one of the things you can look at, because they were talking about, using it for taxes and like, asking a question about taxes. And if you're only
Yeah.
looking at tax code that's 3 years old, then it could be problematic. But I think if you're looking at GPT 4.0, you're getting a lot more close to real time. Um, so, question about the Constant Contact service. Is that a paid service or program, or do you have access to it? Is it an add-on to Constant Contact, or is it just there for everybody who's a user of Constant Contact?
Yeah, at the moment I believe the generative piece of Constant Contact is in there, so you can use the content generator across all of our plans. We have like 3 different plans that you can choose from. As you start thinking about getting into the more advanced things, just in terms of like automation and other ways you may use that data, that gets you into other packages. But in terms of just helping you in terms of just writing content, that's available in all the plans right now.
Fantastic. And to note, in the follow-up email and also probably in chat, there is a link from as an Alignable member using Constant Contact. And I don't know if you lost me on that.
We lost you a
Am I
little bit,
back?
but they just put that. You are
Oh,
back, and
brother,
they just
this
put
is
that in the in the chat window for you. Tech,
fantastic.
technology.
Well,
Here we go.
yeah, this has been like what I literally, there's a guy building a house next door to me, and I wonder if it's just about done. And I just wonder if they're like flipping the breaker for the neighborhood on and off, because it's getting ridiculous. It's never been this bad before. It's like a beautiful sunny day and the power's going on. In any case, well, why don't I wrap up here, just in case I lose power again, but to just because I think we've covered a lot of really interesting ground. I really want to encourage people to do a couple things. One, get in there and use Constant Contact to try this stuff to create your campaigns. Join the Constant Contact user group on Alignable to kind of share what you're learning and help each other kind of come up with interesting prompts or interesting, types of emails. Share what your reaction is to it. It's a public place to kind of share ideas with other business owners working with Constant Contact. and be able to learn from each other. You can use this QR code if you want a quick path to that community. And I just can't thank you enough, Dave, for spending the time with us today. It's fascinating what you guys are doing. It's exciting what we're doing in this space. And I think more than anything, being able to kind of help people understand what this is by showing them it in action is really helpful, because I saw one of the questions in there is like, how many people is this going to put out of work? And it certainly has that threat for people in certain industries who are content creation, which is why you see what's going on in Hollywood right now with everybody being on strike. It really is, those strikes are being driven in large part due to ChatGPT and the risks associated to screenwriters, actors, and the like. So it's not going away. The more we can do to understand it, the better. And I thank you for taking the time to share a little bit of your perspective with our members, and look forward to the next conversation we can have about this. Hopefully my power will stay on when we do that. But thanks to you and everybody at the Constant Contact team for being a part of this today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. Thank you, everybody at Alignable and everybody that helped made us make this possible. And thank you to everyone who showed up here today. I hope the conversation was helpful for you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.